Hi everyone, I am Ceren Denizci and I am going to present the susceptibility weighted imaging technique for the EEE 574 course term project. So before I start, I would like to show my contents first. At the beginning, I will give you a brief introduction to the susceptibility weighted imaging. Then I will explain the principles of SWI, which is basically the gradient echosequence, the phase image, then the phase masking, and combination of the magnitude and the phase image. Our next chapter will be about the clinical applications of the SWI, which is basically traumatic brain injury, hemorrhage, stroke, tumor, cerebral amyloid angiopathy, multiple sclerosis, and calcification. Then I will explain the benefits and the artifacts of this imaging technique, and I will give you my references. First of all, before I start with the susceptible weighted imaging, I would like to mention the black blood angiography. In order to make a black blood angiogram, there are several mechanisms that can attenuate or eliminate signal intensity from blood. And as in our method, susceptible weighted imaging, one can use the intrinsic T2 star shortening of the deoxygenated blood to produce high spatial resolution black blood MR venograms. So susceptibility weighted imaging is actually a new type of contrast in MR imaging. So it is quite different from the spin density T1 or T2 imaging. SWI uses a fully velocity compensated three-dimensional RF spoiled high-resolution 3D gradient echo scan. And this method exploits the susceptibility differences between the neighboring tissues. And in order to manifest this contrast, the signal detects substances with different susceptibilities than the neighboring tissues, such as venous blood, hemorrhage, or iron storage. At the end of the SWI process, 4 sets of images are generated: the original magnitude image, the half-pass filtered phase image, SWI image, and the minimum intensity projection over the SWI image. So, physical principles of the SWI, some or all of the following features: for example, high resolution 3D gradient echo imaging, full flow compensation in all 3 directions, thin slices to avoid signal losses, filtering of phase images to reduce unwanted field effects, creating a phase mask image, operating on the magnitude image with the phase mask, and taking a minimum intensity projection over neighboring slices. So before I start to the susceptible weighted imaging, one should understand completely the gradient echo scan. Like in any other imaging method, one should first create the transverse magnetization, and then RF pulse is produced, as you can see here in the picture. So in order to create the transverse magnetization, first RF pulse is produced, which tips the longitudinal magnetization, partially or complete into a transverse plane. That depends on the tip angle, magnitude of the tip angle. And when this longitudinal magnetization is rotated about, for example, x-axis, it will create a component along xy plane, and that component is received by a receiver coil. And afterwards, the data are encoded both in the phase and the partition encoding directions. And this phase encoding direction is y direction, and partition encoding direction is if the rotation direction is the x-axis. So then the read gradient is turned on, and the data are sampled in the meantime. After this, RF spoiling is applied so that no transverse magnetization component remains before the next RF pulse. So the key point of the susceptible weighted imaging is measuring the local magnetic field variations, which leads us to the amount of the phase change. So the measuring local magnetic field variations can be important of tissue properties, to improve sequence design, to observe effects in the body that can change the local field. So here the phase change as a direct measure of the magnetic field variation. And the simplest approach to, to measure the magnetic field variation is to acquire a gradient echo image with instantaneous sampling so that there are no phase variations induced by motion and no distortion. Then the formulation is shown here. Gamma is the gyromagnetic ratio, delta B is the field variation, and T is the echo time. And we can rewrite this equation with G and delta X. Here G is the geometric constant which depends on the object. This delta X is susceptibility difference, but I have to define susceptibility for you. Susceptibility is one of the measures of the magnetic properties of a material. Susceptibility indicates the magnetic response of a substance when it is placed in external magnetic field. So as a result, the phase change depends on the local tissue susceptibility. And for this imaging technique, only diamagnetic and paramagnetic substances are considered. So as long as our magnetic field variation is small enough for a given echo time, the phase change is in the interval of minus pi and the plus pi. So if the value goes above pi, it wraps to minus pi, and inhomogeneities in the magnetic field cause a low spatial frequency dependence, which means the phase may vary over the image and the phase may appear different than the actual phase. This difficulty can be avoided when either we perform phase unwrapping or we apply a high-pass filter. So the effect of high-pass filter can be observed in this image. In image A, raw phase image is shown, and then when we apply the high-pass filter with different sizes, then we can reasonable image, and it can be quite illustrative. So in order to enhance the contrast of the susceptibility weighted image, the phase mask is designed by suppressing pixels having certain phase values. So as you can see, for the negative phase values, we suppress the phase, and for the positive phase values, the phase mask function equals to 1. This masking function is illustrated in the picture below. Afterwards, the magnitude and the phase data are brought together as a final magnitude SWI dataset by multiplying the phase mask image into the original magnitude image. As you can see, the phase mask function is multiplied with the magnitude image more than one time, and this creates a new image with a different contrast. So this number of multiplication n is estimated as 4 in order to optimize the contrast and noise ratio of the SWI image and to produce a series of SWI data that can be used in diagnosis. So here you can see all of the processes before. In this picture, A shows the unprocessed original SWI magnitude image, and B is the half-pass filtered phase image. C is the processed SWI magnitude image after the phase masking process when M equals to 4. So in D, E, and F, you can see the dark hypointense ring around the vein cross sections. The contrast is getting better when we examine the photographs from D to F. So both magnitude and the phase information are essential for proper tissue characterization and the creation of an SWI image. And combining phase and magnitude image ensures the detectability of the signal intensity changes coming from both T2 and the susceptibility differences between tissues. After this phase making process, the SWI data are often viewed by using a minimum intensity projection over 4 or more images. MIP is useful to show a projection over multiple sections, and this provides a larger coverage of the veins in a given area. As you can see here in the image, you can observe the difference between the photograph A and B. And in photograph B, the veins are picturized in a detailed way. So here is the recommended imaging parameters for susceptibility weighted imaging. Actually, SWR is performed best at higher field strength for some reasons. As you can see, at high field strength, it requires smaller echo time and repetition time. Besides, SNR increases at high field. And also the gradient echo pulse sequence, which is one of the most robust sequences MRI, continues to show its advantages at high field. Still, there are some concerns about the field homogeneity and high specific absorption rates at higher field strengths. So our new chapter is the clinical applications, and SWR is used for various neurovascular and neurodegenerative diseases such as traumatic brain injury, hemorrhage, stroke, cerebral amyloid angiopathy, multiple sclerosis, brain tumor, and calcification. So here you can see the diffuse axonal injury, which is a type of brain trauma. And here in picture A, in T2 weighted images, although this trauma is visualized, but it's not detailed enough. And at the susceptibility weighted image at the level of Centrum Senior Valley, we can see the boundaries of the trauma, but it's not enough for us because at lower levels of the brain, this trauma can be observed in a better way. Yet, SWI is still advantageous than the T2 weighted image since this trauma has other effects at the different sides of the brain, as shown with the arrows in picture C and D. Here is shown is the one trauma effect, and here this 3 different traumas are detected. SWI is particularly sensitive to the presence of very small hemorrhages because susceptibility weighted image can detect the iron deposition in the hemorrhages, and it can visualize where the hemorrhage occurs. So in this picture, computed tomography scan CT fails to detect an hemorrhage. Here the CT scan detects only one hemorrhage, but on the other hand, the SWI image detects 2 different hemorrhages. Our next photograph series is about the stroke. Here you can see an acute stroke due to an early onset of aphasia and the right paresthesias. As you can see, there is no abnormality in picture A and in picture B. The picture C also seems quite normal, but when we look at the susceptibility weighted image, we can see this little lesion with the white arrow. Cerebral amyloid angiopathy tends to manifest in elderly patients and is a major contributor to the progressive cognitive decline. It can play a role in the pathogenesis of dementia and also in Alzheimer's disease. So in this figure, we are expected to see multiple microbleeds in CAA. But the picture A, T1 weighted image, and the picture B, T2 weighted image do not reveal significant abnormality. And also picture C, MR angiography, MRA, shows normal brain vascular structure. But here in SWI, we can see this hemorrhage in the left area. You can also see these little dots as a microbleed, and it is all over the distributed. So multiple sclerosis, which is called MS, is a relatively common acquired chronic demyelinating disease involving the central nervous, and it affects brain and the spinal cord. As you can see, here is the special case of MS. So in T2 weighted image and also T1 weighted image, also the original magnitude image, we can see this MS case. But here, due to the iron decomposition, we can see a ring-like structure around some MS lesion. And iron appears in a ring structure with a smaller amount of iron scattered inside the lesion. So it is darker and scattered. When it comes to tumors, MR stethoscopy, diffusion imaging, perfusion studies have also made significant contributions in this respect. And regarding the diagnosis of brain tumors, SWI is equivalent to T1 contrast enhanced image. This figure shows an example of left temporal glioblastoma. In all the photographs, the boundaries of the tumor is visible, but SWI gives them detailed information on the internal architecture of this tumor. For example, you can see the details here and here. So calcification is a very important indicator in the diagnosis and the differential diagnosis of brain tumors, because in the MR images, brain tumor can be observed either due to the hemorrhage or either due to the calcification. So it depends on the susceptibility difference of this tissue. Although hemorrhage can be observed by the iron deposition, which is a paramagnetic material, and the calcification is observed due to calcium phosphate, which is a diamagnetic material. Both will cause local magnetic field changes, and that results in phase changes as well. So how can we differentiate these images? So here SWI phase image comes to our help. As you can see in CT scan and SWI magnitude scan, tumor is visible, but we don't know still what its content is. So here in the phase image, the veins along the lateral ventricle and sulci appear dark, and this dark image means it is calcification rather than hemorrhage. So our new topic is the benefits of the SWI. It improves the detection of the hemorrhage, microbleeding, hemorrhagic transformation, like stroke, and it detects the occult vascular disease. It diagnoses of cerebral venous thrombosis, intra-arterial clot detection. SWI also identifies of iron and other mineral deposition like calcium phosphate, and it is also helpful in MR diagnosis of neurodegenerative diseases such as Alzheimer or MS, and it also detects the tumor characterization. Along with the benefits, there are also some artifacts of susceptibility imaging, such as multi-susceptibility artifact. So this artifact is caused by the distortion in the MR image, especially seen while imaging metallic orthopedic hardware or dental work. As you can see in the picture, it is the backbone of the skull. Here is the dental work, distorts the image. It gives a wrong presentation of the surrounding anatomy. Here. This artifact can be minimized by using a very short echo time, provided T1 method or photon density weighted contrast, but this artifact cannot be completely avoided. So another artifact is the off-resonance artifact. This artifact arises during the construction of the 3D phase mask regions with a severe field inhomogeneity due to off-resonance effect. In order to reduce this artifact, an approach is presented to map local field gradients by using 3D SWI data without phase unwrapping, and that method is quite effective. As you can see, here is the conventional SWI, and this is after applying the local gradient fields, and the image is getting better when the image is processed with an Hemming filter. So here are the references for my presentation, and thank you for your listening.